constructivism. And I'm going to primarily discuss Jean Piaget, although the readings extend to some degree out past his thought. Piaget is generally regarded as a developmental psychologist, which is not what he thought of himself. He thought that he was a genetic epistemologist, which is a term that I think has ever only been applied to him. An epistemologist is someone who studies the manner in which knowledge, who studies knowledge itself, and that's what Piaget thought that he was doing. And he wanted to understand how it was that knowledge unfolded across time. And more importantly than that, he wanted to understand how the cognitive structures that made up an individual developed across time. So that's generally why he's regarded as a developmental psychologist, because of course he also studied children. Now, I'm going to read you something that Piaget wrote to begin this. He wrote an awful lot of books, and a lot of them haven't yet been translated. And some of the ones that are translated pretty badly. And I think this is probably an example of a fairly bad translation. But regardless of that, the point that's being made is both valid and interesting. So, the common postulate of various traditional epistemologies, which are theories of valid knowledge, is that knowledge is a fact, say, or a set of facts, so that you would go to class and learn a set of facts, and that is what would give you knowledge, instead of a process. And if our various forms of knowledge are always incomplete, as we know they are, because they're replaced sequentially. I mean, for example, recently in the domain of physics, physicists revealed to us that they really didn't understand what some massive percentage of the universe was made of. I can't remember, it's 75% or 95% made out of dark matter, which has never been detected, and we know nothing about it. So that's a good example of how our fundamental assumptions can be challenged at any moment, and how a fact can turn from a fact into a clear fallacy. If our various forms of knowledge are always incomplete and our various sciences still imperfect, that which is acquired and can therefore be studied statically. So the proposition there is that you come and you learn the facts, and the facts themselves are solid bits of information, and they don't change across time, and so that once you have them, you have them. Now, of course, Piaget obviously doubts that. Hence the absolute position of the problems, what is knowledge, or how are the various types of knowledge possible? As an alternative, under the converging influence of a series of factors, we are tending more and more today to regard knowledge as a process, more than a state. Any being or object that sciences attempt to hold fast dissolves once again in the current of development. It is the last analysis of this development, and of it alone, that we have the right to state it is a fact. What he means by that is the fact that human beings learn facts is in fact a fact. Right? So you are capable of learning things. And he thinks that's sort of the fundamental fact. People assimilate information, and they transform as a consequence of it. And so studying that, as he says, what we can and should then seek is a law of this process. We are well aware, on the other hand, of the fine book by Kuhn on scientific revolutions. Now, the reason Piaget throws that in at the end, how many of you know about Thomas Kuhn's book on scientific revolutions? No one? Just 3 people? Okay, well, that's probably not good. Kuhn was one of the 20th century's foremost philosophers of science, and he made a distinction between 2 different modes of scientific process. One he called normal science, and the other he called revolutionary science. And normal science was the kind of science that you'll do as undergraduates, unless you're incredibly lucky or unbelievably brilliant. Or probably unbelievably brilliant and incredibly lucky. And so normal science occurs when you generate knowledge incrementally from within the confines of an already developed scientific theory. So a normal science would be, say, the application of big 5 models of personality to the prediction of some other variable, like, say, relationship success. You're going to uncover something new, but it's not going to shake the foundations of knowledge itself. Now, Kuhn observed that from time to time, there were discoveries that were made that shook the foundation of knowledge itself. There's some well-known revolutions in science. So the Newtonian revolution was a revolution in science. Einstein's work produced another revolution in science. Darwin's work, Mendel's work. Those are the revolutionary transformations of thought that people often consider. Did I say Darwin? I certainly should have said Darwin, because his was probably the most revolutionary of all.